So let's talk about the hardest thing about starting a business. This is something that a lot of people don't understand, even people who are in business. Let me explain. So the hardest thing about starting a business, I'll get to the point, is actually starting the business. And that is a difficult process for several reasons. When you're starting a business from scratch, not inheriting your parents' or your family's business or going into it. No, starting from scratch. What makes a business hard to start is that you got to invent the product or service. You got to figure out the product or service actually sells. Then you got to come up with a business model. How do you sell the product? How do you market a product? You got to set up the structure of your business, whether you get whether you get a factory, depending on the type of business, or you just get an office space, or you just start from your home, which I recommend. And then you got to come up with your workflow. So how do you provide the product in an efficient manner, then setting up the financing if you need to, and then setting up the banking and the incorporate. All these things are difficult. The most difficult part, though, is figuring out the business model, how you can actually find a product or service that people are willing to pay for. That's the hard part. Once that's going, it's kind of like figuring out how to build a car. Once you figure out how to build a car and you get it, and once the car starts moving, meaning once the business, you can think of a car as like an analogy to a business. So once the car is moving, once it's making money, once it's going in the right direction as well, then it's easy, right? You just put more gas in it and you just keep managing it, right? So that's the hardest part about starting a business, that initial beginning stages. It takes years, in fact, many times, years and years, unless you're really lucky. So, for instance, Studio Web, this has been around, the prototype's been around 7 years now, give or take a few months, and it's come into itself. It's viable, but let me tell you, it was years and years of just burning through cash to get it to a state where it was working. Not just in terms of the software and the material and the courses, but also in terms of how to market it and so forth. Tried all kinds of different tactics and different ways of doing things, and fortunately I have cash flow from previous businesses and I was able to finance it myself. But that is the hard part. So when I hear people say, I'm a business guy, you hear these rich kids who say, wow, I walked into my father's business and it was not a big business, only worth $2 million or $4 million or whatever, but then we built it up and I'm a genius. These are classic rich kids, because these rich kids have never experienced building a business from scratch. They've had it super easy, but they don't understand that because they've never experienced it. It's kind of like somebody who's never grappled with a great jiu-jitsu guy or a great judo player or a great wrestler, or somebody who's never fought against a good ring fighter, whether it be an MMA guy or a boxer or whatnot. And they figure, I know I can take them out, and they have no idea what they're getting into when they step in the ring against one of these guys who's just trained at a very high level. It's a totally different game. It's a big eye-opener for them. Same thing with these rich kids. I've known them all. I've known several, rather. And they don't understand, because it's been handed to them on a silver platter, they don't understand that walking into a business that has a few million in sales and is profitable, where all the business processes have been worked out, all the product has been worked out, you got cash flow, you got flow. Once you have cash flow, once you have a business model that's working, once you got contacts and clients, and it's simple. This is a question of refinement and feeding the monkey. So that's the hardest part about starting a business, is that initial stages, figuring out the product and so forth. And so you have to take your time with that, because your best ideas will probably end up not working out well. But what separates successful entrepreneurs and not so successful entrepreneurs typically is wherewithal, persistence, and the ability to see where you made mistakes and to adjust accordingly based on what your clients or prospective clients are telling you. So there you go. That's my tips on starting a business.